I don't want to stick this through because the holes are really tiny and I'll break more. But what are these holes called? This is the sinus, not that. These holes. What? Something foramina. It's in the cribriform plate. For what cranial nerve would this be? It's for olfactory foramina. These are the olfactory foramina of the ethmoid. Or cranial nerve number 1. So that's for cranial nerve number 1. What's cranial nerve 2? Optic. So we're looking for optic nerves. If you look at the back of the eye, back of the orbit, there's a lot of holes back here. We're looking for a smaller one. Yeah, it's a smaller one and kind of superior and medial. So I put this through here. It comes out kind of where the sella torsica is. See that? Right there? That is the optic canal. The optic canal goes through the sphenoid. Optic canal goes through the sphenoid, so this is kind of like where the sella torsica is. So here's the sella torsica. Here's the optic canal. Which makes sense because the optic chiasm is right by the pituitary. The pituitary is sitting right here. So that's the optic canal. All right, for several nerves, for the 5th branch of the ophthalmic, for the oculomotor nerve, for the abducens, for the trochlear, they all go through the superior orbital fissure. In an anterior view, it's the deepest, longest hole here. That's the superior orbital fissure. Through here. Superior orbital fissure. Several nerves go through there. Okay. Which hole next? Just kind of below the superior orbital fissure. Like this. It's hard to get to. This way. So this first hole here, that's foramen rotundum. This one's foramen rotundum. Rotundum, that's for the maxillary branch of the trigeminal nerve. Foramen rotundum. And then the long oval one, that's foramen ovale. So rotundum comes first, more anterior. Here's foramen ovale, the long and oval one. There are other holes here, and we're not going to go over them yet because they're for blood vessels, but only not for nerves. So again, rotundum, ovale, and then what's the next one?
Coming from the eye to
Sorry?
the ovale goes to the eye too.
Does ovale go to the eye? Ovale doesn't go to the eye. Ovale is for the mandibular branch. It doesn't go to the eye. It goes a bit lower. You can see it underneath here. Okay, so rotundum over here, ovale right here. Don't worry about these holes yet, we'll get to them later. Going a bit more like over this ridge, going over this ridge of the temporal bone. There's a hole right here. That's the internal acoustic meatus. That's for the facial nerve and vestibulocochlear. Internal acoustic meatus. Below that, there's a really big hole. Really big hole here. The really big hole is the jugular foramen. Right there. You see that? Jugular foramen. And then the last one that you should know is the small one right next to the to foramen magnum. The small one here, that's the hypoglossal. It's hypoglossal. So again, all this is summarized on slide 5 of your cranial nerve notes. I've highlighted it so that you should be familiar with these holes where they are, identifying them on these skulls, and which nerves go through them. This will be on the practical. Okay. Hey everybody. Making it through the day. We are, quick note, I just got an email, hopefully you all got the email too. If you go to the Student Union Building and the Welcome Center, you can get masks if you need one. It's a limited amount available, so if you express your need for it, if you need one. Free masks. Yeah, free masks. Besides that, we are continuing with the spinal cord and spinal nerves. Does everyone have that packet? Spinal cord and spinal nerves? We do have dissected spinal cord and spinal nerves. Could you grab me one, please? And the model, too. Give me a spinal cord cross-section model. And, like, to the left. There you go. Like one of those things. Whichever one looks. You know what? Actually, I like that one that's in the vertebra to the right of the torso. Yeah. Yep. That. The big one. Big one. Very big. Yeah. So we'll look at spinal cord models, slides, and cadaver spinal cords. That's what we're doing today. I know we said we're supposed to do eye pitting today. We're going to do that next time, probably. Yeah. Okay. Any questions before we get started today? I'm going to be moving back and forth between the dot tab and slides. Cool? Okay. So, we talked about the brain and cranial nerves. So the brain is central nervous system, cranial nerves are peripheral. Now we're going to talk about the spinal cord and spinal nerves. Spinal cord is central, spinal nerves are peripheral. It will be important to note like which nerves are innervating what regions. So we are going to go over specific nerve names. There's a ton of nerves. We're not going to go over all of them. We're going to go over some of the major ones. We'll take a look at gray matter and white matter. We saw that in the brain. Gray matter and white matter in the spinal cord. And we'll also look at what are called plexuses. Hopefully you've never experienced this, but have you ever experienced or know about sciatica, where you feel the shooting pain down your leg? If you have a shooting pain down your leg, it's not a problem with your leg. It's a problem with the nerve leading to your leg. It's called the sciatica. And it begins in that lumbar area. Or if you've ever hit your funny bone, you're hitting a nerve right here, and you feel radiating down towards your fingertips. So it's not that you feel, it's not that you're actually physically feeling something in your fingers. I mean, you are. Nothing is actually touching here. It's that the nerve that stimulates and innervates that area gets stimulated. So we're going to look at these nerve pathways coming off of the spinal cord and seeing how they relate to stuff like this. We have a whole map of where these nerves go. This map is called a dermatome. I may provide this map for you on the quiz. Hint, hint. So being able to understand what does C4 mean, what does T2 mean, what does L4 mean. All that means is a specific spinal nerve coming off of the spinal cord. And we'll see what that means exactly. You can see how most of the C ones are in the neck and arm region, most of the T thoracic ones are in the thoracic region, most of the L and S ones are in the leg region. This is a map, a dermatome, showing which parts of the body are innervated by which nerves. It maps out really reliably for everyone. Okay, spinal cord. It is part of the central nervous system. It is an integrating center. It can function independently. Doesn't mean it can do as many complex things as the brain can. It can't. But from the strictest definition, it is an integrating center. It can process information and decide what to do with that information. A lot of the reflexes that we've discussed, like the knee-jerk reflex, you don't need your brain for that. It's all spinal cord. If anyone needs a mask, Isabel's got a few, so if you need one, thank you. Right, so it can do things on its own, but it can also relay things to and from the brain. We're going to look at the spinal cord, just like we did with the brain. We're going to look at a gross anatomy level, and we will look at histology. So I do expect you to recognize histology as well. So first, gross anatomy. It is protected by bone and the meninges. We've already learned about the spinal cord. Sorry, we've already learned about the meninges and the vertebrae. The vertebral canal, the hole formed by the vertebral arch, that is protecting the spinal cord, and it has meninges as well. So let me show you. I prefer that we have other models of the spinal cord cross sections, but I like this one because it shows it in a more anatomically correct, because it shows how it's bordered by the bone, by the vertebra. So here's our vertebra. Here's the body. Well, here's the body. This is where an intervertebral disc would go. What are these called? This is the superior, and you can't see the inferior. This is the superior articular facet. This is where the Z joints are. Zygapophyseal joints. Here's the spinous process. Here's vertebral arch, lamina, the pedicles broken off so you can see this. These are nerves. We'll get to that. So here's the spinal cord in the vertebral canal, in the vertebral foramen. Let me just leave my. What's surrounding it, this would be the dura, arachnoid would be in here, and then directly against it would be pia mater. So it has all three just like the brain. Pia is directly against it, arachnoid's in between, you can see blood vessels, and then dura is on the very outside. The holes, those are blood vessels. I have an actual human spinal cord here. Okay, right. There's an actual spinal cord. You can see that it's also covered by dura. This is dura mater. To get to the actual nervous tissue, you have to cut open the dura to see everything else. If you look really closely, you can see a little flimsy material. See this flimsy material right here? That's arachnoid. And then we can assume that if we peel the arachnoid off, then we get to the pia mater. It's the same protective coverings as the brain. Yeah, all the darker things you see are blood vessels. We'll get to this in a second, but that's a major blood vessel running up and down the spine.
Is it still called meninges?
Sorry?
Is it still called meninges on the?
It's still called meninges. It's still called arachnoid, dura, pia. It's all the same. It's continuous with the brain. So like if we were to dissect it out, like say we kept everything intact, you can see how it's just continuous from the brain down to the spinal cord. It's all one piece. The spinal cord is not as long as you think. It does not go down all the way. It's not protected by all the vertebrae. The spinal cord actually ends around L1, L2. Lumbar 1 and 2. It ends around there. Spinal nerves, though, are protected down here. We'll get to that later. Spinal nerves are protected down here. The spinal cord ends over here. So officially, we can say the spinal cord starts at foramen magnum. So, base of the skull. Starts at foramen magnum and goes all the way down.
There are a lot of people having
Kyphosis?
because of the nerves.
Yeah, kyphosis can affect nerves, and we'll get to the nerves. Okay, at a gross anatomy level, there's several things, several identifiable features of the spinal cord. Just like we saw several identifiable features on the outside of the brain, you can see things here in the spinal cord. We have arms and legs, right? So you'd expect more nerves going to and from the arms, going to and from the legs. So the spinal cord is not perfectly straight. I'm going to exaggerate it just so it's more visible. But the spinal cord gets bigger, and then smaller, then bigger, and then smaller again. Again, I'm exaggerating it here with this drawing. We have two enlargements of the spinal cord. One is more rostral, this is towards the medulla. One is more caudal, where the spinal nerves come off the medullas. This is the cervical enlargement. It's enlarged because you have more nerves coming and going to and from the arms, sensing from the arms, controlling the arms. It's a cervical enlargement. And there's a similar enlargement lower down, more distal, or more caudal, I should say. That's the lumbosacral enlargement. Ranges around T9 to L1. You have nerves coming and going from your legs. You can see that it tapers off here at the end. Which makes sense. You don't have as, once we get past the legs, there's not really so much to control or sense. It tapers off. That tapering is called the conus medullaris. It's a center cone. We remember medulla, all medulla means is the center of something. So it's the center and it's cone-shaped. Conus medullaris. The tapered outline of the spinal cord. Go to the doctor, let's say. We'll give you a shot or something. All right. So here, it's hard to see, honestly, on a cadaver, it's hard to see the lumbosacral and cervical enlargements, but you can see the conus medullaris. I'm feeling for the spinal cord. I feel the spinal cord here, here, here. It's starting to taper off. You can see the cone coming down. It's wide here, my fingers are, and the probe, and then it starts to taper. See, it's very thin here. This is the conus medullaris. What you'll also notice is that this tapered part keeps going. Oops. This tapered part keeps going. This is not nervous tissue per se. It's not neurons. This is an extension of the spinal cord. It's an extension that isn't actual neurons. This thing connects all the way down. And it connects to the sacrum and coccyx. It's an extension of the pia mater. It's called the filum terminale, the ending filament. It's made of pia mater. It's to help stabilize the spinal cord. It is made of pia mater. So that's, again, the way I found that. Here's the tip of the conus medullaris. Just keep following the tip down. Now it's filum terminale. It is slightly different color than the rest. So this is not a nerve. This is just the filum terminale is pia. All of these are all nerves. And it kind of looks like a horse's tail. Hence, it's called cauda equina. So all the spinal nerves that hang off of the conus medullaris, referred to as cauda equina is Latin for horse. Cauda is tail, horse's tail. So everything below L1, L2, it's all spinal nerves. There are spinal nerves coming up here, but they don't form a tail. Everything coming off of here is called equina. Yes?
I just want to clarify, so the conus medullaris is the end of the spinal cord, and then from there on, if they become spinal nerves?
Yeah, so repeat that. Conus medullaris is the end of the spinal cord, actual spinal cord tissue. Filum terminale is just a pia to help stabilize it. And then conus medullaris sort of clusters of spinal nerves coming off of the conus medullaris. You do have spinal nerves all along the spinal cord, but these ones happen to cluster at the end and form a tail-like thing.
And that's the cauda
Equina. That's gross anatomy. Well, this is still kind of gross anatomy, but this is with a cross section. So we take a cross section of the spinal cord. It looks like this. It looks different at different levels, like cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral. It can look different in different regions, but in general it has this pattern. You've got a small slit at the top. This is the posterior or dorsal side. We're going to use dorsal and ventral a lot because when we're talking about the brain and spinal cord, it's kind of confusing if you're talking about anterior, posterior, dorsal, ventral. This is the ventral part. Anterior ventral. There's a bigger fissure here. There's a hole in the middle called the central canal. What kind of glial cells is it lined with? Ependymal cells. Ependymal cells. And then the division of gray matter and white matter forms this butterfly-like shape. White matter is outside of the butterfly. Gray matter is inside. So no matter what region of the spinal cord, it follows this basic pattern. Since this is just a wrinkle, this is known as the posterior median sulcus. And back here, the bigger hole, the bigger thing, trench thing, that's the anterior median fissure. The anterior median fissure is very visible even on the gross anatomy here. So the question is, which side is anterior, which side is posterior when looking at the spinal cord? So is it this side or is it this other side? How can I tell? The anterior median fissure, because it has this big fissure, a blood vessel can fit here, a large blood vessel. You can see the large blood vessel clearly on this side. This is the anterior side of the spinal cord. And so if you did a cross section, we're looking at it like that. The anterior median fissure would be here. So yeah, this is the anterior side. The other side is dorsal or dorsal posterior. Okay. Now the numbering of the spinal nerves is based on where it comes out of. So hopefully you remember the vertebrae, that there are 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral. There are 8 cervical nerves, 8 pairs, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 1 coccygeal. Because cervical and coccygeal both start with C, if you want to note that it's a coccygeal nerve, capital C, lowercase o. These sacral coccygeal nerves and even these lumbar ones are all part of the cauda equina. You can see at the very tip of the spinal cord, at the very tip of the condylus medullaris, here's that coccygeal nerve. It's called a coccygeal nerve because it comes out of the coccyx. Here's the coccyx, it goes through a hole in the coccyx. These are sacral because they come out at the level of the sacrum. This is, in purple is the sacrum. These are lumbar vertebrae, they're going in between lumbar vertebrae. There are 7 cervical bones, but there's 8 nerves. There's 8 because the first goes above atlas, the second goes below atlas. So there's an added cervical nerve. So the numbering starts making sense once you get to the thoracic. T1 is below T1, T2 is below T2, and so on. For most of these nerves, especially the cervical through lumbar, what holes are they going through? What holes? The intervertebral foramina. If you take a look at our skeleton over there, or this model here, see all these nerves poking out? You only have these holes when you have the 2 vertically stacked on one another. These are intervertebral foramina, nerves coming out either side. These spinal nerves, we've actually seen already. What are they covered by? What are spinal nerves covered by? Wrapped. Even more than that. You have myelin. Connective tissue coverings? Connective tissue coverings? Organizes them into fascicles. Epinurium, perinurium, endoneurium. Remember that? That was spinal nerve. So they're all wrapped by those things. They're also mixed. So some are afferent sensory, some are afferent motor. So you have a bundle of both. You can see that we're going to get to what these are called in a second, but you can see nerves coming off here. You can see nerves coming off here. One of these is sensory, one of these is motor. When they join together, that's the spinal nerve. The joined axons. Here in our model, you can see, again, branches of axons. We'll get to what it's called in a second, coming off from this posterior side, from this ventral side, and then they come together. This is the intervertebral foramen, and this is the spinal nerve. Coming off right here. So here's the spinal nerve. where the two sets of axon groups have joined. You can see that it branches. So here's one coming from the dorsal side, and here's one coming from the ventral side on either half. So there's a dorsal root, and there's a ventral root. Spinal nerves branch into dorsal and ventral roots. Here's the dorsal root. Here's the ventral root. And again, the dorsal and ventral root, they will come together to form a single nerve. They just, once they get to the spinal cord, they branch. One's going on the dorsal side, one's going on the ventral side. That should sound pretty familiar. Dorsal root. Remember dorsal root ganglion?
Yeah.
That's over here. This is the dorsal root ganglion. That means there's a neuron cell body over here. It's a pseudo-unipolar axon. Its dendrites are off over here. Its axon goes into the spinal cord and synapse is somewhere over there. The dorsal root is primarily for sensory neurons. Primary sensory neurons. Remember, you've got cell bodies clustered together, you've got axons off to the side. The ventral root is primarily motor control, efferent control. So that means you might have a cell body here, multipolar, and its axon goes out to control something. Goes out the ventral root. This pattern holds pretty well. Dorsal is for sensory, ventral is for efferent to the knee.
Also is a motor or
Sorry?
sensory?
Ventral is motor, dorsal is sensory. Yes.
And they join together in the gray matter of the spinal cord, or?
What do you mean?
I thought you said that they branch, but like, and then they join together in the spinal cord.
Oh, so what I was saying about the branching, I'll draw it on this side. So here's your dorsal root, here's your ventral root. This is, they branch, yeah, they form a single nerve, so this is a spinal nerve.
Okay.
So that lump is the ganglion?
Sorry?
That lump?
That lump is the ganglion. Note there's only a dorsal root ganglion. There is no such thing as a ventral root ganglion. There's only a dorsal root ganglion. If we look at our spinal cord, we can see the spinal nerves branching off. Here's this little notch. This is a branch. Here's a branch. They come in pairs very regularly all the way up and down the spinal cord. We know we're looking at the ventral side because here's the anterior median fissure with a big blood vessel. So all of these branches, what can we safely say that these are? Dorsal roots or ventral roots? These are ventral roots. These ventral roots combine with dorsal roots, which are on the other side, to form single nerves. These are the dorsal roots. These, like this right here, this is a dorsal root. And they will come together to form a single nerve coming out of this spot like this, a spot like this. Yeah, dorsal, dorsal. Again, gray matter is in this butterfly-ish region. White matter is out here. These protrusions are called horns. So the gray matter is organized into horns. And if I'm being more accurate, it comes out a little bit here. We have a dorsal horn, lateral horn, and a ventral horn. Dorsal, lateral, ventral. 3 parts. Dorsal horns are typically where you find secondary sensory neurons. What do I mean by that? All these neurons form a pathway. Our primary sensory neuron, its cell body is found in the dorsal root ganglion. A secondary sensory neuron, this neuron has to synapse onto something else. Here's a secondary sensory neuron. So let's say this goes to the brain. This neuron cell body is found here in the dorsal horn, and then it sends an axon somewhere else. That's what I mean by secondary. It's second in the path. Lateral horns are usually for visceral motor neurons. So if you want to control stomach movement, control anything that has smooth muscle, that would be in the lateral horn. And ventral horns, as I showed you here, ventral horns have cell bodies for motor neurons, somatic motor neurons. You'll notice that there's gray matter that crosses the line here, that's around the circle. Those are called gray commissures. The word commissure means things that cross over from side to side. You can see this with models, you can see this with histology. All right, so there is our central canal, epidermal cells lining. I know this looks darker, but this is white matter. Here's the posterior median sulcus. Yeah, this is the posterior median sulcus. Anterior median sulcus ends right here. Let me show you. You can see how long the anterior median sulcus is. It goes all the way up like that. So what tissue do we find here then? What should we find there? What structures of the neurons? In white matter. Sorry? What structures of neurons should we find in the white matter? Axons, myelin sheets of axons. And if we look closely, you see the dot? That's an axon, the white, myelin. Dot's axon, myelin. You see tons of that here. That's all in the white matter surrounding the gray matter. If we move to the gray matter, like here's gray matter, you can already see large stained axons, or neuron cell bodies. Here's a neuron, here's a neuron. These are large neurons. And we're in the ventral root, so these are probably motor neurons, somatic motor neurons. They're probably motor neurons control muscle. Some features for the white matter. How do we name the white matter? We're going to be using terms like columns and tracts. Nerves are if they come off of the spinal cord. So these are nerves because they're outside of the spinal cord. If we're talking about white matter in the spinal cord, they're called columns or tracts. They're called that because these axons are going up and down the spinal cord, forming columns. Columns go up and down. We will go over specific ones coming up. Very generally, This region here is the posterior white column. This region right here, posterior white column. You may see it called funiculus. I'm just going to call it white column. You can call it funiculus if you want, but posterior white column. That's for ascending tracts, sensory. The lateral white column, so over here, lateral white column is for descending tracts, motor control. The anterior white column is actually mixed, so that gets a bit more complicated. So I just want you to know it's mixed. Anterior white column is mixed. One more important structure. Not only does gray matter cross the center, white matter does too. Just above, just dorsal to the anterior median fissure. This is called the anterior white commissure. It's a really important spot because, for example, you know how, if I want to control my left hand, which side of my brain is being used?
Right.
My right side. So there is contralateral control. There's a crossing over typically happening in the anterior white commissure. We will see crossing over happen in the anterior white commissure. The fancy word for crossing over is decussation. Decussation means to cross over. Accidental tracts crossing over. Decussation. Contralateral sensation or control. So again, when you're looking at slides, you're looking at histology, you look for large neurons, that's how you know you're in gray matter. Look for lots of dots with white circles around them, that's white matter. Alex.
I guess I'm kind of in my point. So, if the staging was different on the other one that you showed us,
Yeah.
when we're taking the test, then we want to look for the larger
Yeah.
dots. And the
So gray matter, white matter, those terms make the most sense if you're just looking at with your own eyes at the tissue. That's when gray and white matter makes most sense. With staining, you're changing things. It stains, change color. So look for shapes. Look for large neurons. That's gray matter. Look for dots with white circles. That's white matter. In gray matter, you have neurons and other things you find in the astrocytes, other things that you find in the
It's gray
Yeah.
matter and white matter. Is this opposite of the brain then?
Is it opposite of the brain? Kind of. In the brain, we mostly have gray matter towards the outside, white matter towards the middle. Some exceptions. Here, it's opposite. White matter towards the outside, gray matter. Take a moment. Raise your hand a few more times. Counts on 3. 1, 2, 3. On 3, say letter. 1, 2, 3. A. Ventral horn has motor neurons, somatic motor neurons, so yeah, we'll be able to move your analysis. Think about both of those things, simple access and no risk. Think about both of those things. There's one answer that fits best. Is there anything more time? Counts on 3. 1, 2, 3. Take a moment, talk to your group. Go ahead, 1 minute. Talk to your group. All right, one more time. Let's see what you think. Counts on 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, we gotta even... All right. Which ones can you definitely rule out? A and B. You can definitely rule out A and B because there's a really high risk of hitting a spinal cord here. Really high risk if you go through C7, C8, T7, T8. If you put your needle in here, you have this space to get fluid from, and then if you just go a little bit too far, you're going to hit the spinal cord. Not good. Same here. If you go through here, you can get fluid, but if you go too far, hit the spinal cord. Also not good. The other two choices were L4, L5, and I can't remember, S something?
You can damage them.
You can go through here, it's going to be really difficult. This is a narrow hole. Like if you're going through the sacral foramina, going through here, they're not easy to find. That's really small. So in terms of ease, that's not easy. There's a little risk of damaging a spinal cord because spinal cord's not here. But you've got large holes between the lumbar vertebrae, and there's no spinal cord here. You'd want to go around here. That's where you do a spinal tap.
And there is a fluid.
Yeah, so Jess, I heard you talking about fluid. So the spinal cord does end here, but pia mater, the film terminale, continues down.
Okay.
Which also implies that the dura mater will surround that as well. This is all filled with fluid.
Okay, so the fluid continues.
Fluid continues,
Okay.
so you can get fluid.
I got confused. If we don't have a spinal cord there, if we don't have a
But the pia continues down, so. Right, okay. Yeah, so the answer is C. This should be a review. Remember, so this is what I was trying to show earlier, so I think, Jess, this is also what I was trying to show. Here's your dorsal root, here's your ventral root coming out from the dorsal and ventral parts. Here's the dorsal root ganglion, there is no ventral root ganglion, and the two combine to a nerve. This is our spinal nerve. So it's mixed, it's got both, some of these are sensory axons, some of these are motor efferent axons. If you know how they're organized, you've got fascicles surrounded by perineurium, you've got endoneurium surrounding individual axons, and then surrounding the whole thing is epineurium. Cool, cool. Here's that word that I introduced at the beginning, a dermatome. A dermatome is an area of skin That's where derma comes in. An area of skin innervated by branches of the spinal nerve, cutaneous, meaning towards the skin. Again, if I show you this on a quiz, you should be able to interpret it. All this is saying, on the anterior side, so this half is anterior, the L1 spinal nerve is innervating the inguinal region. So if you poke yourself here, you can feel it on the anterior superior iliac spine, you can feel that. If you poke yourself on the back, the posterior side, around T2, that's going to be your upper back. C3, that'll be your lower neck. Could you identify what muscles would be in these areas? If you wanted to control your rectus femoris, which nerve would you use? Probably like L3 or L12, one of those. If you wanted to control your biceps. It says L12. I wonder if that's a typo.
Biceps C5.
Yeah, probably L2. There's no L12. Huh.
C8.
Oh, it's L1 and 2. That's what they mean.
Oh, I see.
If you want to control your biceps brachii,
And maybe C5.
I'd say T1.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's a posterior cell, okay.
This is anterior, this is posterior.
Okay.
So based on these dermatomes, based on this map, we can pinpoint where there's injury or if we want to control something because our bodies reliably map to this type of mapping. We can sense certain things, we can
Okay,
feel
the
certain
quiz
things.
you're gonna ask.
And the quiz too. Yeah.
Like it's gonna be the muscle, which region is gonna
I could ask you muscles, I could ask body parts, all the things you learned already. There are certain nerves that I would like you to know. In general, your book goes into way more detail about this, and I'm not going to test you on that level of detail. So the level of detail that I want you to know is what's listed here. First, when these nerves branch and come together, when these roots branch and come together, what they'll often do is branch out again, branch some more, and then branch back together. It gets really confusing. You get all these branches going in and out together. The term for that is a plexus. So I just want you to know there exists 4 plexuses. Plexi. There are 4 plexuses. There's a cervical plexus, brachial plexus, lumbar plexus, and sacral plexus. There is no thoracic, and it doesn't need to be because you just got your nerves going in your chest, stomach area. You don't need to branch that much. There are 4 plexuses. Okay, the cervical plexus. C1 through 5, innervating head, neck, and chest. There's one specific nerve that I want you to know. It's called the cranial nerve. It's a branching of C3 and 5 together. Cranial nerve is really important. Innervates your diaphragm. Obviously, you don't want to damage that, then you can stop breathing. That's what respiratory arrest means. What else is important about this? Some cranial nerves, so it's not all spinal nerves. This has some cranial nerves. Accessory and hypoglossal, they are part of the cervical plexus. Accessory for controlling your trapezius and your synovial. Hypoglossal, what does that control? Close your tongue. Other muscles, laryngeal muscles, diaphragm, rhomboids, serratus anterior, these are all controlled by the cervical plexus. Specifically, the cranial nerve controls the diaphragm. You can see it on this model. So our rack of ribs model has it. Okay, anyways, our rack of ribs model has it right here. What's labeled as number 2 here. This is the cervical plexus, all these nerves that bundled together here. What comes down here, oh, you can't see it. This nerve right here, this is the phrenic nerve coming down. That's the phrenic nerve. It would go down to the diaphragm, which is not here. Okay. This one that goes farther down is the phrenic nerve.
This is just the one single one that branched off from the.
Yeah, it's the one single one that branches off, and you have one on either side. But phrenic nerve. In the brachial plexus, this is a big one because it's going to the arms. There are 5 nerves that I'd like you to know. 5 nerves that I'd like you to know. The more proximal ones are axillary and musculocutaneous. Axillary is going to the deltoid and teres minor. It's for shoulder movement. Axillary is for shoulder movement. The deltoid and teres minor. So that's the axillary shoulder region, the axillary nerve. Musculocutaneous goes a bit anterior to your arm, so it's where your biceps brachii is and brachialis. So it's for flexing at the humeral ulnar joint. Biceps brachii, brachialis, musculocutaneous, the anterior arm, brachial region. These 3 go to your forearm. These 3 go to the antebrachial region. Your radial, as the name suggests, goes along the radius. It's more for your thumb and extensors. Extensor carpi, extensor carpi radialis, extensor carpi ulnaris, extensor digitorum. Those are extensors. The ulnar nerve, which is the one that you hit if you hit your funny bone, because it goes down the ulnar side. That goes, that's a flexor carpi radialis. And then the median nerve goes down the middle. This is the one that's protected by your, what's the curve called at the base of your wrist? The carpal tunnel. It's protected by the carpal tunnel. So that's why compressing it's a bad idea. You damage that nerve. That's mostly the flexors of your wrist. 5 nerves for the brachial plexus that you should know. On here, so the cervical plexus was fairly small. Cervical plexus is up here. And here's the longest one coming down the phrenic nerve. This is the brachial plexus. On this model, you can't tell the difference, or it's hard to tell the difference between which nerve is which. We have another model somewhere. I'll get to it. Like this, but small, but short level nerves. Yeah. I'll show you that model in a minute. Okay. Remember, there's no thoracic plexus, but there is a lumbar plexus. There's a lumbar plexus coming off of the lumbar region. There are 2 nerves that I want you to know from the lumbar plexus. The femoral nerve, which is a very large nerve that actually goes a bit more anteriorly. Femoral nerve, so it's innervating the anterior muscles, quadriceps, sartorius, pectineus, and psoas. And the obturator nerve. Remember the obturator foramen of the coxal bone, this hole here? So the obturator nerve goes through that hole. It's a really big hole. It fits lots of things, but it goes through there. And it's going medially. So the nerve comes out and goes medially. So it's controlling medial muscles for adduction. The psoas, the adductors. We didn't go to the pectineus, so don't worry about that.
What about the kids,
We're not there yet. on this model, here's the lumbar plexus and coming down. Hold on one second, okay, sorry, no. Okay, here's the ilium. Here's the iliac crest. This large nerve coming down, that's sitting right on top of the iliacus, this is the femoral nerve. And so, trace the femoral nerve back. This is the lumbar plexus, where it all branches out and then in and out. So femoral nerve, lumbar plexus. The obturator is not as visible, so I'm not going to test you on that, but lumbar plexus. The femoral nerve. The sacral plexus, we get one of the largest nerves that you can see, the sciatic nerve. So lumbar goes a bit more anteriorly and medially. Sacral plexus, lumbar plexus goes a bit more anterior, sacral plexus goes a bit more posterior. So the sacral plexus is innervating the hamstrings, adductor magnus, and then it branches down to the lower leg. The sciatic nerve is the major nerve of the sacral plexus. This is the one, if you feel sciatica, it's feeling that pain all the way down your leg. The sciatic nerve branches into the tibial and the common fibular nerves. Tibial is a bit more anterior medial, common fibular is a bit more lateral. So on our model here, again, here's the iliacus. You can see that this is more anterior to the iliacus, so this is the femoral nerve. If you want to find the sciatic nerve, we also look for a big nerve, but it goes farther back. So this coming down with here's number 1. This is the sciatic nerve, and it's branching to form the sacral plexus. This is the sacral plexus. Sacral plexus, sciatic nerve. Here is a nerve model showing the whole body. So, don't see the phrenic nerve on this one, but you can see the cervical plexus. This is the cervical plexus. Brachial plexus is way more apparent, comes out to the arm. What goes more proximally, this is the axillary nerve. Musculocutaneous, there's a lot of branching here, I know, but look for right where the biceps would be. Here's musculocutaneous. Oops, sorry, I missed it. Look for right where the biceps should be. Just the center one, that's musculocutaneous. And then to better identify the forearm ones, look at the forearm. On the ulnar side is the ulnar nerve. In the middle is the median. Radial side is the radial nerve. So radial, median, ulnar. This one goes anterior. This long nerve goes anterior. This one. This one goes anterior. This large, long nerve goes anterior to the coxobone. This is the femoral nerve. So this is the lumbar plexus. This is the femoral nerve. This one goes through the pelvis, through the obturator. Medially, this is the obturator nerve. Femoral, obturator.
Can you point to the obturator again? I'm sorry.
Obturator is going medially here. This one, here you can see the plexus near the sacrum. That's coming down. Coming all the way down. This is the sciatic nerve. You can see it's going behind the bone, and it's coming from the sacrum. This is the sciatic nerve. And the sciatic nerve will branch sometimes. The one that's more anterior, this is the tibial, and the one that's bigger here, this is the common fibula. So tibial is more anterior, common fibula is more posterior. Lateral posterior.
And the sciatic is the goes for.
Sciatic. It's not here. Sciatic. Is there any others I want to point out? Oh yeah, Friedrich is not really shown here. Yeah. Oh, sorry, let me re-point this out again. I think I said the wrong one. This one here, this large one, when it's a large one, it's either going to be femoral or sciatic. This one goes behind the bone. This is sciatic, right here, that's sciatic. This one, and these branches, that's obturator. So obturator is going to the medial thigh. It ends at the medial thigh. So this is obturator. Obturator, sciatic, femoral, 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 obturator. So again, femoral, obturator. Cool. We'll have these models for you to look at, of course. Put them in the back. Take a look. Hands one more time. Hands on three. 1, 2, 3. 1, 3. Say the letter. 1, 2, 3. B. B is brachial. Yeah, looks like he's got it fixed. He's been shooting pretty well lately. Yeah, it's brachial. The brachial plexus. That's what thoracic outlet syndrome is about. The nerve was pushing up against the bone. One more. Raise your hand a few more times. Hands on three. 1, 2, 3. Take a minute, Dr. Drew. Go ahead. Okay, one more time please, hands on 3. 1, 2, 3. Guessing is fine. No harm. Alright, still mixed. When I say control knee extension, what muscle? Give me an example of muscle you'd use. What are the quadriceps? Brachius femoris, vastus, medialis, lateralis, intermedius. So we're controlling these anterior femoral muscles. Tibial and confibular, that's going to sural region, so it's not those. Obturator, it's going medial thigh, so that's for your adductors, for your femoral nerve. Okay?
But the femoral grow locally here or not?
Femoral nerve, it'll branch more, but it's innervating your upper thigh. Hey, let's take a 10-minute break. I want to control my finger. That starts in another part of my brain, the primary motor cortex, goes down, out the spinal cord, out a nerve, to the muscles of my hand. There's a lot of different pathways. I'll show you in a minute. I've organized a bunch of them for you. And so what I have here is like an example of how these pathways work. Like let's say you're doing karaoke and you sing into this microphone. The microphone's a receptor. Sensory receptor. It goes through wires, it gets bundled, it goes into your major system, it gets processed in your brain or whatever system. And then if you want to amplify it, then this would be an afferent pathway. An efferent pathway would be going down and out somewhere to, say, some speakers. So you've got ascending pathways that go in to your integrating center, and descending pathways that go out, things that control. So we're having output here. We're producing sound or producing movement, whatever it is. There are a lot of different pathways, a lot of different ascending sensory pathways and descending motor. We went over some of them, kind of. We talked about how the posterior white column is mostly sensory. We talked about how lateral is mostly motor. Anterior is mixed. It's mixed sensory and motor. When I talk about columns or tracts, it's going in 3 dimensions, up and down the spinal cord, to and from the brain. So let's say you sense something. Here's our first order sensory neuron, our primary sensory neuron, the dorsal root ganglion, goes through the dorsal root, the synapse here, and then we can go up to the brain. So we're going in 3 dimensions. Or descending, you have the opposite. What I want you to do for activity 11, it's activity 11, we skipped a bunch. For activity 11, I'm going to assign you each a pathway. And I want you to draw it how I've always been showing you to draw it. Dendrites, cell body, axon, axon terminal. And if it's this would be a bipolar. If it's multipolar, multiple dendrites. If it's pseudo-unipolar, the cell body's off to the side. I want you to make drawings using these conventions and showing me where, in what part of the body are the dendrites located, in what part of the body are the cell bodies located, in what part of the body are the axons and axon terminals located. They're all in very specific areas. I guess one more thing I'll say is that if you have an ascending tract, which most of you are going to be assigned one today, if you have an ascending tract, there's typically 3 neurons involved. First order, second order, and third order sensory neuron. We've been talking about these first order ones, the ones that have cell bodies in the dorsal root ganglion. But second order ones typically happen in the spinal cord or brainstem. Third order is typically in the thalamus, because remember, most senses go through the thalamus. I want you to figure out, and I've done several for you, figure out where these parts of neurons are found. That's for sensory. This is slide 6. Slide 11. From descending motor tracts, there's typically 2 neurons. There's an upper motor neuron that usually starts in the primary motor cortex, and there's a lower motor neuron in the spinal cord that goes out to your target. There's an upper motor neuron and a lower motor neuron. So I know we haven't gone over this, so I'm going to be lenient as far as what you turn in on Wednesday. This is due Wednesday. I just want you to try it out. For activity 11, you are to sketch out a pathway. And I've given you most of the things that are here. So I'll go over one for an example, actually, after I count them out. Grab 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7,
18.
20, 20. Is that everybody? Okay. So for example, I'll do 26 since this isn't anyone's. So we went over how the vagus nerve part of it is important for taste. For the very, very back of the tongue, the vagus nerve is important for taste. So if I were to draw this out, what I'm asking you to do, come up with a scenario. So like, let's say I am drinking my favorite soda. What is it? What's that one? Do they have a Taco Bell, the Mountain Dew one? Yeah, it's there, Baja Blast. See, I'm drinking Baja Blast. And so here's my straw. And a drop of that Baja Blast gets to the back of my tongue. Very, very back. Because that's where the vagus nerve senses. So over here, if I look, I'm going to zoom in. At a cellular level, I've got taste buds in these taste pores, and these are taste cells here. So I sense with those taste cells. And these taste cells communicate with dendrites. And so here's an axon of a neuron that then keeps going, and its axon forms the vagus nerve, part of the vagus nerve. So here's an axon forming part of the vagus nerve. Should have drawn this so big.
That sensory, would that be drawing that as a unit or pseudo-unipolar?
Yeah, so since this is sensory, would it be bipolar or pseudo-unipolar? Good question. This is taste. It's a special kind of sensory thing. In this case, it's bipolar.
Okay.
So pseudo-unipolar for somatosensation. If
And
it's
that's
like touch, temperature, pain.
Yeah, okay.
For somatosensation, that's pseudo-unipolar.
Okay.
For the special senses, like taste, vision, and smell, that's bipolar.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that's something that I want you to consider in how you draw it. Is it bipolar, pseudo-unipolar, or happens to be bipolar? All right, so this axon, that's part of the vagus nerve. It goes to the medulla. So, sorry, I've kind of drawn this way too big, so now I have no room here. Here's the medulla. This nerve goes up into the medulla and keeps ascending. The term for the axons, now that we've gone in the medulla, it's no longer vagus nerve. Nerve is peripheral. So if it's outside of the brain, it's a nerve. But now that these axons in the brain, it's called the medial lemniscus. For this pathway, it's called the medial lemniscus. I'm just going to write ML. I'm running out of time. All right, so we go up the medulla to the thalamus. And in the thalamus is where we synapse. In the thalamus, we have another set of neurons. So here's another set of neurons that then goes to the gustatory cortex. Does anyone remember where the gustatory cortex is found? The what? In the insular cortex. So I would draw like a frontal section of a brain and have that axon go end in the insular cortex, gustatory cortex. That's what I'd like you to do. Come up with a situation, sentence or two, What is it that you're doing that's causing you to activate this pathway? Give me a situation. Show me all the levels that are necessary. If you need to show me like a really quick inset of what's happening at histology tissue level, show me your whatever receptors get activated, show me the shape of the sensory neuron, and where it ends up. Like how many neurons are in this pathway? This pathway happens to have two neurons, but yours might probably going to have 3 in most cases. To help you with that, if you look under activity 11, there's this link here, or I have it here. This is if a mid-sagittal view is best.